right, my babies. 7.1, specify and model requirements. Now, if we're remembering basically 7.0, what we're doing is we're doing requirement analysis and design definition basically for our strategy and in order for us to reach our solution. One of the steps, basically was to specify the model requirements, which basically describes a set of requirements or designs in detail using analytical techniques. After that, we have to kind of like verify them and then validate them. And then after that, we have to define them and then define the solutions and then ultimately analyze potential value and recommend a solution for it. Today, we're going to talk about specifying and modeling the requirements. The purpose of this is to specify the model requirements, is to analyze and synthesize, to define elicitation results into requirements and designs. The description of it is specifying the model requirements. I really don't like the fact that they always start with it, but I feel they do that on purpose in order for us to have it ingrained, because specify and model requirements describes the practices. I would have said it, but that kind of like doesn't emphasize what we're doing. Fuck them. So specify and model requirements describes the practices for analyzing elicitation results and creating representations of those results. Elicitation results are basically the results of the people that we talked to, the information that we gathered, right? Like what we extracted. And we're creating representations of those results. Like, how do we document them? For example, right now I'm doing like research on how to do a gaming system. And there are separate parts of it. There's a part for the economies of scale. There's a part for like the game design. There's the mechanics behind it, like what makes it go up and what makes it go down. And I have to be able to like represent them in a way so that the people working with me are going to be able to see it, or are going to be at least be able to understand what I'm trying to tell them, because they do not necessarily want the 50, 60 to 100,000 hours of research that I did. They just want kind of like that deliveries perspective in order for them to know what they would work on, because there's the input and the output. So when the focus of the specifying and modeling activity is on understanding the need, the outputs are referred to as requirements. So like when the focus is understanding the need, then the outputs are referred to as the requirements. So the input is so when the focus is understanding the need, basically the input is information and the output is requirements. And then requirements is also technically an input for something in the future. And probably like, oh, we actually did that here, right? Like whatever we do here basically is an output for, well, every step is an output for the second step afterwards. You see this? Like we get the verified requirements after that, and then we get the specified requirements. But these also have an output somewhere in like chapter 8, 9, or 10, because we're extending the project. What we're doing is we're dissecting, starting a project from point zero, understanding what we want, and extending into finally having a solution and then applying it with all the tools that we do. So yay. So when we're focused on the specifying and modeling of the activity is on a solution, and the outputs are referred to as designs. So so that's basically what I was trying to search for earlier. When we're focusing on specifying and modeling activity, and that is basically on the need, then the output is referred to as the requirements. Well, when the focus is specifying and modeling the activity is on a solution, not the need, the solution, then the output is referred to as design. Because at one point we're trying to understand, like what are we supposed to do, and at one point we're designing what we're thinking about. So something important here, they kind of gave it to us. In many IT environments, the word design is used specifically for technical designs created by software developers, data architects, and other implementation subject matter experts. All business deliverables are referred to as requirements. That's just them telling us stuff. In addition to the models used to represent the requirements, the task also includes capturing information about attributes or metadata about the requirements. Specifying and modeling activities relate to all requirement types. For those who don't have an understanding of software, But metadata is kind of like the associated data with something. For example, if I'm giving you a laptop, the time I give you the laptop could be considered metadata, right? If I am meeting with people, the timing I meet with them, the locations I meet with them could be extra data that supports basically, that don't necessarily support the solution directly, but they might help in the future because conducting research in Christmas, for example, for something that's Halloweeny is not the smartest thing to do simply because it's after Halloween, I guess, maybe, or maybe it is a smart thing if your the purpose is for something that's after Halloween, right? Like what happens after Halloween and after Christmas. I have no idea. I'm just throwing something out there like that. Mostly if I'm preparing for a party in Christmas, on Christmas time, I would want my research to be dated before Christmas, naturally. And that's basically where metadata shines because those are like the random extra data points, uh, the whys and hows and sizes and all that shit. So with this, we have inputs. And remember, like here specifically, one of the beautiful things about this book is ultimately these kinds of what you're seeing here is that graph, which is basically the flow. And ultimately, what we're adding, here's the inputs that we're getting from the elicitation results, which we talked about at 4.2 and 4.3, these two chapters. And ultimately, what we're doing is we're inputting them here at 7.1. And whatever we're outputting, we're getting the requirements after we're done, which we're outputting at verifying them and validate, which basically the tasks afterwards, we're going to use the specify and model requirements in order to verify them and validate them. And I love the verify and validate because now for the first time I kind of know I know which one comes after the other. I've been working on a flow myself. So I know I have to verify the small business and I have to validate the small business, but I don't know which one is after the other. Verifying the small business was basically me touching on the fact that it exists. Validate, it's basically the legalities of it. But that's my own project. You don't have to worry about that. Love you. Anyways, uh, so the guidelines and tools, we have modeling notation standards, we have modeling tools, requirements architecture, and requirements lifecycle management tools, and solution scope. All of these are happening right now here in this chapter 7.1, specify and where we specify and model requirements. 7.1.4, what are the elements? First, we model the requirements. Like a model is a descriptive and visual way to convey information in a specific audience in order and support analysis. This, for example, is a model, right? But this is a diagram. So like one plus this one leads to two, two leads to three, three leads to four, five, six, and four, five, six combined leads to 12, 15, whatever. So models may also be used to confirm knowledge, identify information gaps, and the business analyst may have and identify duplicate information. So business analysts choose from one or more of the following modeling formats. Matrices. A matrix is used when the business analyst is modeling a requirement or a set of requirements that have complex but uniform structure, which can be broken down into elements that apply every entry in the table. Matrices can be used, like I wish they would give us an example of matrices here so I can kind of point at it. But we're back to the formats where they're just kind of explaining the tools. Yeah, let's see. Okay, models. Matrix models is basically a 2x2 grid or a 3x3 grid chart. I'm gonna try to, this is a matrix. Please be on the right. See, this is not a matrix. This is an organizational chart. This is a matrix. All right. Can you see it? So on one side we have the x-axis and the y-axis basically, and we kind of like have data in between, like function manager, project manager, and something about them is connecting them. It could be random information. It could be directed information. Anyways, back to this. Diagrams. A diagram is a visual, like this one basically, and often pictorial representation of requirements or a set of requirements. A diagram is especially useful to complexity in a way that would be difficult to do with words. I think it's the fact that I speak Arabic. Depict kind of comes out as deficit. I don't know. Diagrams can be also used to define boundaries and business domains, categorize or create hierarchies in systems, and show components or objects, such as stuff like this. Like, if you want me to show you, this is kind of like a diagram that I've been working on. And it describes the flow, where scan a QR code page, onboard a community member, and like all kinds of stuff that happens with it, right? That's the kind of thing that I'm talking about. Ah, this is the manga I wanted to read. Yes, new chapter is out today. Perfection. All right. So using one or more of the model formats, business analysts determine specific categories and specific models within categories to be used. Model categories can include, remember, our goal is to be facetious. Business analysts are supposed to be anal about this shit. So basically, we model categories and we basically compartmentalize shit like people and roles, like the models, the organizations. Basically, if a model represents organizations, groups of people, roles, and their relationships with an enterprise and to the solution, right? We're creating these connections, like the rationale here. They're saying a permissions matrix, like level 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 permissions, and then management and like assigning roles and people to it. So model represents why of like the why of a change, like the rationale, for example, the why of a change. Techniques used to represent the rationale include decision modeling, scope modeling, business model canvas, root cause analysis, and business rules analysis. Activity flows, for example, it represents a sequence of actions, like the one I showed you about what I'm working on. Is like this happens and this happens and this happens. The capability, these models focus on features or functions or an enterprise of a solution. You can actually, all of these could be on one chart, but the thing about it is it becomes way too detailed. What we do normally is we kind of like highlight, for example, like if this happens, and this happens, and in between, there's the capability model. For every feature, there's like a few things that have to happen for them to exist. And data and information models represent the characteristics and the exchange information within the enterprise role or solution. So here, business analysts should use any combination of models best suited to meet stakeholder needs in a given context. Remember, I really want you guys to remember that by chapter 10, we have over 50 fucking techniques that we're going to go through. We're going to go through all of them individually, one video at a time. And these techniques are kind of like all the randomness put in one spot. So we're supposed to analyze requirements. Like again, we're picking the models we want. Analyze requirements. Business analysis information is decomposed to components to further examine for anything that must change to meet the business need, anything that should stay the same to meet the business need, missing components, unnecessary components, and any constraints. This is us basically pruning the bushes. The level of decomposition required and the level of detail to be specified varies depending on the knowledge and understanding of the stakeholder. Again, like you kind of like, you're making decisions on every level, bro. Like, as a business analyst, you really have to be that prick or that kind of like, I have no fucking idea. Your job is to make something out of a fuck ton of shit that's happening. So analysis provides a basis of discussion to reach a conclusion about solution options. Number 3, represent requirements and attributes. Like you kind of have to show it to the people that matters to, like business, identify information for requirements and their attributes as part of the elicitation results, right? Like I listed it and these are the results. And requirements should be explicitly presented and should explicitly, not implicitly, like in detail, this is what I got from this because this is how I thought. Ultimately, because management does not want to do the job, they don't want to work, they hired you for it, and they're going to pay you a fuck ton of money for it. Yeah. The exhibit characteristics of requirements of detail and designs quality, and various attributes can be specified for each set of requirements. Like the more details you can actually give, then the more connections you give. Congratulations, you're fucking business analyst. And as part of specifying requirements, they can also be categorized according to the schema described in task requirements classification schema. Typically, elicitation results contain information of different types. So it's natural to expect that different types of requirement might be specified at the same time. Categorizing requirements can help ensure the requirements are fully understood and a set any type is, see here, here, categorizing requirements. So they've been giving us options, and now they're telling us like in creating these separations, small instances where you give more detail, but still kind of like giving that detail only relevant to the context that you're working with, allows for clarity and allows for like a full understanding from the other side. Remember, you're talking to people that were not interested to begin with; they just wanted to see better results or more money, whatever productivity means for them. Setup type is complete. That's the appropriate visibility between types. Amazing. Implement the appropriate levels of abstraction. The level of abstraction of the requirement varies based on the type of requirement and audience for the requirements. Blah blah blah. What is abstraction, man? Like sometimes, yeah, like I cannot go to an operations manager and kind of like throw in numbers that are not related to operational costs. They would kind of want to hear the story from a different uh, perspective. And the same thing, I can't go to people, like, for example, if I'm talking to inspectors, I cannot go to them and like throw accounting at them because they're, for example, safety inspectors would want to, would only want to see how, would want the limited amount of numbers connected to their job because their job is literally just to test things and check on things and make sure those things are whatever it is. So pick your levels of abstraction, fucking know who you're talking to, and understand fully what you're trying to explain and to who you're trying to explain in order for you to be able to kind of like use the terminology that they would be able to understand. That's why most of the time metaphors work because you're able to like explain something simply and that would send the same message. And sometimes details are not really that intense or that needed. What are the guidelines and tools? Modeling notation standards. We have them that allow requirements and designs to be specifically specified as an appropriate for our audience to purpose the models, standards, templates, and syntax to help them ensure the right information is provided about the requirements. Modeling tools, software products to facilitate you pick your ones. Requirement architecture, the requirements of their interrelationships about among item among them can be used to ensure models are complete and consistent. Requirements, lifecycle management tools, software products that facilitate recording, organizing, storing, blah, 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 solution scope. Like they're literally feeding us right now what we could use in order for this to get done. What are the techniques you could use? Acceptance and evaluation criteria, business capability analysis, like to represent features and functions. Acceptance and evaluation criteria, represent acceptance and evaluation criteria, attributes of the requirement. Business model canvas, we talked about this once, but we'll dive deeper into it in chapter 10. Used to describe the rationale of requirements. Business rules analysis, used to analyze business rules so they can be specified and modeled alongside requirements. Concept modeling, to define relationships relevant to the change. Data dictionary, used to record details. Data flow diagrams, used to visualize data flow requirements, as in like A plus A, B to B, B to C. Data modeling, used to model requirements to show data will be used to make stakeholder information needs. Decision modeling, used to represent decisions in a model in order to show the elements of decision making required. Functional decomposition to model requirements in order of identity constituents. This is important because there's a lot of times where data travels from one spot to another, but it has to change. So that's the functional decomposition, as in like, what's the function of all of this that could be used on somewhere else? The glossary is where you kind of like create that structure for people to be able to like go and like see and like understand you better. Like, used to record the meaning of relevant business terms while analyzing requirements. Interface analysis, it's basically an outline. No, glossary is the end of it. It's basically this word represents this. So people don't get confused. Interface analysis used to model requirements in order to identify and validate inputs and outputs of the solution they are modeling. And functional requirements analysis used to find and analyze the quality of service attributes. Organizational modeling used to allow business analysts to model on roles, responsibilities, process modeling, prototyping, roles and permissions matrix, root cause analysis. I fucking love this one, by the way. Scope modeling is used to visually show a scope boundary, sequence diagrams, stakeholder list map personas, state modeling, use case. They literally dumped over 20 of them, and they're like, oh, these are the ones that you could use, but at your own discretion, use everything else. And stories basically of users in order for you to kind of like build your model around it. Use cases and scenarios, state modeling, you specify different states of parts of the solution. Different states are kind of like, depending if you're doing production, there's liquid state, solid state, there's building state, there's the structuring state, there's molding state. I have no idea. What are the stakeholders? Any stakeholder that's relevant. And what are the outputs is the requirements. Specified and modeled. You fucking did it. You have the requirements set. You have them specified and modeled. Now the next stage, you will do what? You verify them and then validate them. And that's, thank you very much, my guys. Here we go. This is 7.1.2.